You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by CBOE. CBOE is one of the world's largest exchange holding companies, and we're inspired every day to innovate some of the industry's most powerful products, technology, and solutions. We're the industry's leading force driving access to global markets, a better trading experience, and powerful data and analytics to inform better strategies. We're committed to engineering new ways to help our customers realize their potential and navigate the marketplace of tomorrow, today. Visit CBOE.com. That's CBOE.com to learn more about our expanded offerings. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means it's time once again to view some volatility. It's time for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting, at least we hope so, Options Insider Radio Network. Hopefully you guys have figured it out by now, wherever you're listening to this, iTunes, Google Podcast, Pocket Catcher, whichever aggregator you use out there to listen to the show. Make sure you, if you haven't done so already, make sure you go and grab our network feed. It gives you all of our shows, not just Vol Views. And if you're so inclined, if you like what you're hearing, make sure wherever you're listening, throw a nice review or two here or there. It helps with all that search mumbo jumbo that goes on in those podcast stores. A lot more complicated than you might think over there. And of course, for those of you who can't be bothered to wait for the on-demand version, we got you covered. We got the live version every Friday, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, via the old Mixlr, MIXLR. So follow us on social media at Options if you're not doing so already. You'll see when that link goes live. Just grab it, click on it even in your Twitter browser. You can play it right from there, and you can listen to the show as it's being made, as the sausage is being made. Of course, however you listen live after the fact, make sure you reach out, hit us up, questions, comments, insights, pearls of wisdom. We do like to hear from you guys on occasion when the moon is full. All right, and joining me on the old program today, let's see who we've got on the old Vol Views panel. I do believe Mr. Corner Office is still flitting about somewhere in Asia. He's been across the proverbial pond for some time now over there, doing RMC Asia, I think FIA Asia, a bunch of other Asian conferences over there. He'll be back, I think, next week to give us the lowdown on all things Asian volatility. Meanwhile, though, we got a good crew standing in, starting off with the greasiest of meatballs, also the owner of all those VXX Jan 10 puts. He is Mr. Mark Sebastian from Carmen Line Capital by way of Option Pit. Mr. Meatball, welcome back to the show, sir.
How nice of you. You know what? I'm having a great day. I am the filling of a amazing girl sandwich right now, between my beautiful wife and my kick butt assistant, or director of operations, Leisha. So I'm at the office today and enjoying. Yeah. Hi there.
We'll let you
having myself a great day.
We'll let you figure out your sandwich issues over there as we move on to our other. I think the Skype gods are smiling on him. We shall see. He's been on the program before. It's been a little while though. He is Bill Valentine of the titular Valentine Ventures. Bill, welcome back to Volatility Views, sir. And we're having all sorts of issues today. No one can seem to hear me over here on the old show. Bill, nod once if you can hear me. All right, we're going to get him reconnected over here too, listeners. Seems like nobody can, the Skype gods are not smiling on anybody. We'll see if we can make all that work, listeners, as we keep on rolling right on into the volatility review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Vol Review. This is indeed the portion of the show where we break down what's moving, what's shaking, what's rocking, what's rolling in today's, and then indeed this week's volatility action. And oh, what a funky week it has been when it comes to all things volatility and indeed VIX. It kind of been all over the place. You saw some sell-offs in the broad market, then some rallies, and of course you saw some commensurate moves out there in VIX cash land. We saw it getting as high as flirting with the 12 handle earlier this week around Monday and Tuesday. Then slowly but surely, the erosion set in as we moved towards the latter portion of the week. And as we're recording this right now, listeners, and streaming it live, right about 9.75 out there in VIX cash. So yesterday, where we were closing in right around 10 and a quarter, so that was looking really good for my crystal ball prediction. Today, as non-farm sucks the rest of the air out of the sails here, not so much in terms of my prediction. Who knows? We got another hour to go, so maybe we'll get a little bit of juice in there on the old VIX machines. We'll hope. Fingers crossed for the rest of the hour. Of course, all that downside on the VIX means there's probably green on the screen, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now. Most of the major indices up about close to 0.5%. S&P and Dow in about 0.4% territory. The tech-heavy Nasdaq leading the charge to the upside, up nearly 0.75 of a percentage point up there. So a little bit of bloom back on that rose after everyone got spooked yesterday after downgrades and Tesla and all this other crazy stuff. Now everyone's back in rally ho mode. Everyone's back in green on the screen. Everyone is happy. Let's see, listeners, if the Skype gods are happy. Hopefully our offerings to them have been sufficient. Let's see who we got joining me on the show here today. Let's try one more time all the way out there to California. Hopefully the fires haven't shut him down. Where I do believe we are joined by Mr. Bill Valentine of Valentine Ventures. Bill, are you there? It's the second time the charm, sir. I'll take your resounding silence as a no. I do think the fires may have completely overwhelmed them. You know what that means, Mr. Meatball? You get extra time here on the old platform. So what's been catching your eye this week, sir, from a crazy volatility perspective?
Ooh. You know, we've had a lot of up and down this week. It's been pretty crazy. You know, we saw the VIX hang well over 11. We saw this great, quote-unquote, rotation happen. And then since the great rotation kind of stopped happening yesterday, and VIX then summarily completely tanked. And that is what we have basically seen for the last few days.
Yeah, it's been kind of a funky week. You know, we thought maybe non-farms would keep things a little bit alive today, and they pretty much just popped what was left, what little air was left in that balloon. They kind of just squeezed it right out. You know, there's a lot of things lurking on the horizon. We've got all these issues with Jerusalem. We've got, of course, the fact that the Olympics are coming, and they're going to be within not just missile range, but artillery range of North Korea. Great planning there on the global part there. Just fantastic logistical planning there. And a bunch of other fun stuff. And everything else. I see where the fires are raging over there. I don't think they're near. I think Bill's actually a little bit north. I think he's in Oregon. So I think he's outside of fire range. We're trying to get him reconnected, listeners. But it has been a crazy week. Like we said, volatility of VIX also looking a little frothy. As you might expect, VVIX up there, 90 about 93 or so right now. So looking pretty rich, looking pretty juicy up there in VVIX land. It was about 90 this time last week, so about 3 points higher than what we saw last week. Also interesting, the old Skew index not really showing a lot of change, about 131, so right about the same area as it was last week. And of course, the VX and the old Nasdaq VIX for all of you who like to play out there as well, hovering right around a 15 or so, pretty much a point or so, a little bit less than that. Different than last week. We also saw, a little bit of action coming this morning on the futures. We saw the front month about a little over a handle, about 1.1 or so handles from the cash, and the second month future about 2.5 points. That's going to exacerbate now that we're seeing the cash coming down aggressively. Mr. Meatball, I know you're not exactly one of the Thompson twins, so you don't sling the futures all day, but anything that's been lining up out there in the old VIX futures term structure catching your eye, sir?
Yeah, so let's talk about what happened, last month. We had the Jan D spread that ballooned to like 1.6, 1.7. Jan was way overbought. And believe it or not, with the VIX way lower, that spread is actually still 1.4. It's tightened up a little bit from whence it was. I've got it 1.5 right here. And so, and it, on multiple occasions, tightened in the last week to under $1. You've got a decent VIX cash to December spread, and Jan is 1240, so maybe getting a little cheap. The other thing I'd point out, at least this morning, at one point, we saw that the VXN still for the first 2 hours of the day was above 15.5. There wasn't a real opportunity to sell some Nasdaq premium. It has since dropped at least 0.6 of a point. Meanwhile, the VIX has dropped about 9.63. So that spread, the VIX to VXN spread, seems a little wide to me. So I kind of like buying some premium in maybe SPX or SPY. And selling premium in the NDX or in the Qs. There seems to be a little bit of a richness to VXN. Why? Well, again, the great rotation profoundly affected Nasdaq in a way that the S&P really did not wear it.
Yeah,
that was kind of, but it's been interesting.
Yeah, the old VIX VXN, we like to, that always lines up. Whenever they get a little bit out of whack, that's when they get juicy. Unfortunately, our old friend VXN, and wish we can't really sling the old options out there, but you can, of course, touch the other products that play in and around Nasdaq vol. And when things get a little, people are always writing to us, pretty much nonstop this year, saying, oh, vol is so cheap. Where can I look at some vol? Well, here's some opportunities line up where it might be interesting over there to get things going. Speaking of getting things going, we're seeing if we can make more offerings to the Skype gods here for Mr. Valentine over there. Meanwhile, let's look at what's actually been lighting it up this week out here in the old VIX mothership options. An interesting week so far today, kind of light. We're averaging about 750, almost 760 a day out there right now. And, let's see. I think we have him. Let's check one last, maybe a third time is the charm. Mr. Bill, have you made your requisite sacrifices to the Skype gods? Are you there now, sir?
I don't know. Have I?
Yes. There you go.
Apparently you have.
I guess the third fatted calf was the charm.
Last thing I heard is Sebastian's in some kind of a sandwich with two women. And then everything went radio silent. What did I miss?
Yeah, the show went downhill from there. You pretty much didn't miss a heck of a lot. No, we were just talking about VIX, NASDAQ, VIX Cash, all the other fun stuff that's been catching our eye. So it's now your turn, sir, to regale us with what's been catching your eye out there from a volatility perspective over the past week. And a crazy week it has been.
God, the absence of it. I mean, it's just mind-blowing to me. It just continues to do what it does. I mean, I used to think I was cool 2 years ago when people would talk about VIX and they say, what was the all-time low for VIX? It wasn't in the 10s. And I'm like, no, it was actually about 9.6. And now we see that every day. Interesting trade that took place last Friday when you guys did the last show. I was kind of watching it as the show was going on. And I don't think anybody's highlighted it, but I think it's kind of interesting. to note. You'll recall briefly the president was going to be impeached last Friday.
Oh, yeah.
And the VIX took off. And when VIX was at 1370, somebody came in and set up a risk reversal, a classic risk reversal. And I loved this trade. I loved watching this trade because it was so large. And sometimes when you see these big trades, it kind of takes your breath away. So what happened was the VIX was at 1370. Somebody sold 235,000 contracts of the December 2012 puts. Okay. And then they at the same time bought 235,000 of the December 2015 calls. So clearly making a bet. It was a zero cost trade, 90 cents on both sides. The trade size itself was 21 million dollarinis. And if VIX settles at 10 on December 20th, at this point, that trader's out a cool $47 million. So always stunning to kind of see that kind of that trade got lost behind the elephant trades that took place on Friday as well. But
the interesting thing is he probably doesn't care if he loses the $47 million. Would be my guess.
Yeah, because he is a family office or an institution.
Yep.
But
he's got some big freaking long money that he was protecting, and they're happy that he did it. That's the thing. People are like, I complain. But the reason why the VIX is so successful is because there are so many natural longs. There are so many more natural longs than there are smart people that want to go in and short it. And people are just starting to realize that one VIX whale by himself swallows up more options than every single VIX short combined. It's not there's so much two-way paper that I every time you're like, it's not a crowded market, I'm like, who in the world thinks it's a crowded market? And then you look at Twitter, and there are a lot of people that think that the vol space has a lot of shorts. It doesn't. It has a massive amount of longs. So that which is just shocking. You know what was interesting that I saw. So I do some different research, Bill. You'll like this. I do some different research. You know what was going on Wednesday and Thursday morning this week during the middle of that huge, great rotation? There were traders dumping QQQ straddles, QQQ strangles, QQQ puts. There were a lot of people stepping in to sell premium to that market. So it's been I know I've covered a lot of things, but there's just been there's so much richness to this market. People think it's a lot simpler than it is.
Well, and you know who ultimately is the home run hitter in all of these trades? That's the CBOE. I mean, God bless them. I mean, if you look at their chart, their chart's almost Bitcoin-ish. It's Qualcomm in 1998. It's like,
well, Andrew put out a great post that if you don't want to actually own the ore, which is like Bitcoin or VIX or something, invest in the miner or the shovel, and that's
absolutely
CBOE, CME, and Square, which is another one.
It's funny. I was just talking about this with someone yesterday who's an old school trader, member of the CBOE was for many, many decades, and they were kind of lamenting to me, but look how rich that is. And of course, CBOE stock, as we're recording this right now, right around 125 listeners, and I was kind of joking with him that when it went from 30 to 60, I thought that seemed like an aggressive move. Now here we are, effectively double and beyond from that. So if I had told either of you guys this, like in the rearview mirror, if I had said looking forward on January 1st, I said, you know what? This year, the VIX is going to average almost single digits for the entirety of the year. And guess what? It's going to be a killer year for the CBOE in terms of volume and stock price. Would you have laughed me out of the room?
Well, let's go back to a quote I heard on Volatility Views. I think this was right after the election. Do you remember the quote about how Donald Trump is not a 12 VIX president?
Yeah, they say he had a single VIX president, which either way, take your pick. It's wrong either way. I think we were all in that. I was in that camp too. I think everyone assumed, okay, here we go. Let's get the roller coaster going. It's time for some vol, and it's been the opposite.
Right? Yeah, no, exactly. When I heard that, I'm like, you're exactly right. This guy's going to be, pushing it to 15 about every other tweet. And, here we are in this completely volatility-less world. And yet, the amazing thing is not just the implied volatility, which is what we're seeing in a 961 right now. Wow. But realize, what happened to volatility? Like, there's no realized volatility. And, so you look at VIX, you say, boy, is VIX broken or is it too low? Like, no, it's actually pretty steep relative to realize that risk premium continues to just be, baby got back if you're selling vol still. So, I don't know, fascinating year.
Yeah, it's crazy. If you had told me that, realized vol, 30-day realized about a 6, VIX cash hovering south of 10, so in the single digits, and yet we're still going to put up record-breaking 3+ million contract days in VIX options. I would have said, what crazy voodoo, what weird products are you smoking? Because that makes no sense. Of course, a lot of that on Friday, of course, on the back of that crazy whale. We talked about him before on the show. He's been pretty active. He rolled into Dece, then rolled again into Jan. Whatever that guy does just obscures everything else on the board. He becomes number one on all the strikes that he plays in. So yeah, it kind of throws a little bit of a crazy wrench into things. Like your risk reversal, for example, all that kind of gets lost in the weeds when someone's out there doing 2+ million contracts in the VIX, takes up all the oxygen in the room. But still, crazy town, I think, is pretty much a generous term to describe it. Speaking of the old VIX options and what's been lighting it up out there, like I said, it's been a ADV kind of weak, right around 750, so not bad, but certainly well off, about 100K off where it was not too long ago in the 850, 860 range. And so far today, we're seeing about a third of that on the tape. So it looks like even with non-farms, probably not going to hit the ADV today, almost 270 on the tape right now as we're recording this, a little bit past the midway points of the session. And the rest of the week was kind of light, at or below the ADV most of the days. 701 yesterday, 738,000, the most robust day so far on the tape. That was on Wednesday. 634K on Tuesday, Monday, 716. The old call to put Russell wherever he is in Hong Kong or Singapore or wherever the heck he is breathing a sigh of relief because the call to put is coming back down, easing back down from that 4 handle at about a 3.6 right now. I know he gets nervous when things get a little bit north of the 3.5 level. That's when he starts sweating. Of course, doesn't take much to spook Mr. Rhodes out there. And in terms of what's lighting it up out there, the hot VIX strikes, I bet you guys can probably guess what at least 3 of them are. Yeah, they're our old friend, the whale, and the other ones are the remnants of his old trade. So it's kind of a crazy whirlwind out there in the big VIX options this week. Starting off, number 1 with a bullet. In terms of big open positions in VIX right now, Jan 25s, nearly 600,000 on the tape, 585,000 as we speak. We also saw the Dece 25, so surprise, surprise, his other position. Number 2, his legacy position, 435,000, still open on that strike. Wherever this guy goes, paper just flocks behind him, so it's kind of like just paper begetting paper in all of these strikes. Number 3, the Jan 12 puts, surprise, surprise, about 418,000. Again, that's part of that big 6-way that actually went up about a week ago. Number 4, the Jan 15s, also another leg of that trade. 368,000 open there for the number 4 spot. Number 5, the Dece 20s, 323,000. A pretty active strike, actually about 50,000 more of those trading today. Maybe we'll get to that in a little bit. So Dece 20s lighting it up on the board on an otherwise quiet day. About 1/5 the overall volume we're seeing going up today is in these Dece 20s. Number 6, Feb, the first Feb on the list, only Feb on the list actually. The Feb 22s, about 310,000 contracts open. There, number 7, the Dece 20s, the Dece 15s, with about 300,000, a little bit less than that, 299 to be precise. Number 8, the Dece 12 puts, once again our old friend the 12 puts, 267,000. Number 9, the Dece 11 puts. So a lot of put action on the list this week. Actually, about 3 puts, which is a new record for us in the last couple of months. The Dece 11 puts at number 9, 258,000, rounding out the top 10. The Dece 22s, right, nice Goldilocks kind of middle of the range there, 256,000 total of about 12.7 million, about 9.9 on the calls and about 2.8 million on the puts. Mark or Mr. Valentine, any other VIX options activity lighting it up, catching your eye this week? Could be in the weeklies. Didn't get a chance to do a weekly rundown. Mr. Rhodes off gallivanting, so if you got something in the weeklies catching your eye, have at it. Or in the big VIX motherships, I mentioned the Dece 20s are just lighting it up today. Anything else catching your eye out there?
Yeah, we saw, you're right, the Dece 20s are lighting up. We saw a guy, what happened was the paper bought 50,000 of the Dece 20s for a dime. Actually, that was against a sale of the Jan 18s at 55 cents. 49,775 versus 8,435 of those.
Yeah, a funky ratio on that one.
Really a funky ratio. It's kind of an interesting one. A guy bought 7,000 of the Jan 35 calls for 14 and bought 5,300 of the March 55 calls for 17. A ratio stupid trade. Why not? The Jan 22-24 call stupid was bought 50,000 times for 84 cents yesterday. And we saw paper come in and buy these 20s over and over and over and over again at varying degrees. So that was my majority of what I've seen. I've looked around. We have not seen as many 1x2s, which kind of surprised me. VVIX prior to the kind of the big pop had gotten its way into the 80s prior to the whole Trump news. Had gotten its way back in the 80s. So I was surprised we have not seen more backspreading. Trying to see if there's anything else that I really like that I saw. We've seen some December 15 call sellers, some Jan call spread buyers, but and 50 Cent has been in and out buying 50,000 lots here and there as well, mostly in January, in and around the 17, 18, 19 strike.
Mr. Bill, what's catching your eye out there in VIX options these days, sir?
Well, you see a lot of trades selling the puts as a way of financing other stuff going on, as a way of getting long VIX calls, and so I did a little back testing on, and in fact I posted a matrix. Anybody who's on Twitter can look at Valentine CFA. I did a matrix of the probability of winning a trade by selling various puts by delta and by selling various calls by delta, and then going on the other side of those trades. You would be surprised at how few times selling puts on VIX doesn't work out that great. On a 30-day to expiration basis, if you're selling the 50 delta puts, which you get premium for, right? And theoretically, if it's the 50 delta put, you should be getting 50-50 turnout in your favor. Actually only pays off 37% of the time. If you're selling the 60 puts, you're only getting a 32% win ratio, and the 40 puts only give you a 42% ratio. Yeah. So, not in terms of advice, don't do it. But boy, you hear about a lot of people talking about selling puts as a means to finance, and I'm just not sure that that works out as well as people think it does.
It doesn't, and you have to have a certain, there are spots where I like it better. The VIX does have kind of a natural full floor. There's a reason why you don't get a ton of premium for the 10 puts and the 10.5s. But that's if I'm going to sell anything, it's typically around there. A lot more often though, I'm doing things like 1x2s or doing put spreads that allow me to put that stuff on. The put sellers, most of the time I guess the theory is if the VIX is 960 and my 10.5 or 11 puts I sold settle at a loss, then, I don't really care.
Because it's not much.
Right, because it's not much relative to my portfolio. So, there is that, but one of the things that's different about deltas is that the delta is a moving target in VIX, whereas it really isn't. If the VIX stays the same, the delta will move, which is odd for an at-the-money option. That's unique to VIX, right? Like, so if GE is trading 18 and I sell an $18 put and GE sits at 18, then my 50 delta put will still be the 18 put. Now, nice. My out-of-the-money puts will change. But if I sell a 50 delta put in VIX and the VIX stays the same, when my VIX put expires, it will be 100 delta. I think VIX is the only product where that exists. Maybe there's other spots, but that is unique to the volatility indices, and that's why being smart about it, or finding let's say a CFA around the bend area that's smart about it, would be useful.
And well, I made a posting yesterday on Twitter because I thought the statistic was interesting that if you asked somebody how often would the 30-day long call 50 delta for VIX pay off? And the answer is, over the last 5 years, if you just bought the 50 delta VIX call, 30 days held at expiration, you only won 11% of the time.
Oh, wow. Gotta love that.
Yeah, I mean, so and when I did this was yesterday. I just jotted down the stats, and this is why. VIX was at 1016. The Jan 17 future was at 1275. The Jan 17 50 delta call was a strike price 1350, and it cost you $1.25. So the minute you're into it, you're out of the money $4.59.
Yeah.
On a 50 delta VIX call for 30 days. Like, good luck.
Yeah, I just, speaking of deltas and VIX, I just went and I retweeted that matrix you put out there, Bill. So if you're not following Bill, for whatever reason you should be, then you can find it on our Twitter there at Options. By the way, that back test looks like coming courtesy of our friend Ophir's system there, the CML Viz. Easy for me to say. By the way, up top there, those aren't strikes, those are deltas. So just keep that in mind. It's not like a you say, what's a 90 strike in VIX? No, that's delta for you. And it breaks it down by a bunch of different stuff, VXX, UVXY, some fascinating stuff. So for all of you out there who are asking us all the time about different strategeries out there in VIX and VXX and related lands, then there you go. Nice little matrix for you to sink your teeth into. Speaking of VXX, excuse me, Bill, this will be a test for you to see how much you've been listening to the show of late. If I had to ask you right now, and I will, so prepare yourself. If I had to ask you right now, what would you say is the number one options position out there in our old friend VXX? I'll give you a hint. The meatball owns about 1,000 of them, at least he did. What would you think? What would you say it is, sir?
1,500 of them, Mark.
1,500? Oh, there you go. Doubling down. 1,400.
What's the number one option trade against VXX?
Yeah, the number one position, open position in VXX right now.
The number one open position in
no cheating.
VXX. Well, actually, I'm in fairness, I'm diverting my eyes from my live ball screen. God, I have no idea.
This was a test to see if you've been listening, sir, and you have failed. It is indeed the Jan 2019 10 puts. I've been mocking Mark about these for a while, so much so that he bought a bunch of them.
They're up.
Yeah, I mocked him into a good trade. Go figure. So there you go. You're welcome, sir. Gibson's is on you the next time we talk.
Yeah,
but yeah, we've talked many times about, just you've been on here. We debated just what exactly drives that VXX erosion. We won't get into that right now because that could fill pretty much the entirety of the rest of the show. But VXX has been eroding very aggressively. Reverse split up to about 45, 47, somewhere in that range. Already down to, as we're doing this today, 30.5. So that erosion coming hot and heavy. That 10 strike not looking as crazy as it seems. So you have added more to your holdings since last we spoke, Mr. Meatball.
I have not. In fact, I've sold 100 of them. I had 1,500. I'm down to 14. So there's my huge shift in positions over the last couple of.
It doesn't have to get to 10. Right? I mean,
no.
At the pace of the acceleration right now, you're making money hand over fist.
Yeah, I'll be out of these when VXX is at 20.
So next week then.
Next week.
Yes. Yeah, that's possible.
All right. Speaking of next week, we got to get to the elephant in the room that everyone's been hitting us up about. Everyone's asking us about. Again, one of the reasons I was wishing we had Russell on because he could speak about this. He's been talking about this a lot. Of course, this Sunday, as I take a little beverage here to soothe the old tired vocal cords, this Sunday is the day I know a lot of you have been waiting for. We've been talking about it. Everyone and their mother going on about Bitcoin. When can we trade an actual product on Bitcoin, a listed derivative, etc., and so on and so forth. You've been bugging us about it like we have any listing power here. Well, finally, your prayers have been answered, whether or not you wanted this one or not. In fact, I have the numbers on that. We'll get to that in a little bit as well. But we are seeing the first listed real, quote-unquote, Bitcoin derivative coming out this Sunday from our friends over there at the CBOE and their CFE. In fact, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to bump up a question here. This comes set up for the Vol voicemail. This is from Tortega, and they're asking, it's not a Vol question, but what's the deal with the Bitcoin futures and the Gemini index they are based on? Well, of course, if you want all the specs, you can head on over to the CFE or the CBOE website, and they'll just type in, Bitcoin futures. They'll take you to the product page. That will explain all of it, but long story short, they're launching 5 p.m. Central on the 10th of December. That is Sunday. The first real full trading day, of course, is going to be that Monday. So by the time we get together on the show next week, we'll have almost a week's worth of data on this product and how it is or perhaps not trading. Worth noting, multiplier 1 Bitcoin. That means a lot more than when they created this product. I think that's about 3x what it was when they first announced this product back in October. So bear that in mind. That's a pretty meaty multiplier, 1 Bitcoin. The ticker is going to be XBT. They are cash settled, for all of you wondering about that, of course, U.S. dollars. You're asking about the U.S. Gemini Trust. That I'm not as familiar with the actual underlying. Again, that's one of the reasons why I was hoping Russell would be on to dive into that a little bit. But effectively what that appears to be is an auction coming out of their Gemini exchange, where they have this auction process to determine this final settlement value for the XBT futures, and that's going to be the auction price determined at 4 p.m. Eastern. On that product, they can list up to 4 near-term weeks, so 4 weeklies, 3 near-term serial months, so your old monthlies, and then 3 quarterly months. They're going to kick them off with just the 3 near-term serial months. I don't know, Bill or Mark, I'm sure you guys have been getting deluged with this as much, as not more than we are. Any thoughts? Are you guys going to dive in on Sunday? And then B, do you have any thoughts on this one, the first horse out of the gate in the great Bitcoin race of 2017?
I'll jump in. To me, this is really a simple question. I wouldn't trade Bitcoin with a gun to my head. I have a fundamental rule that says if I don't understand what something is, I probably shouldn't put money behind it. I don't know about you guys, but I've read hundreds of articles about Bitcoin. I still don't understand. I don't even know what it is. Right? I mean, I understand conceptually what it is, but I don't think any of us know what it is. It has all the price behavior of things that have never played out well in history. I mean, like, there's no asset where like there was a land grab like is going in now, the greater fool theory, that pushed it up dramatically and it stayed up. I mean, it just doesn't happen. I think the risk of loss is everything from 100% to, close to 100%. I'm not saying I can't predict it. Why? I don't understand what it is. But I think the potential for loss is going to be huge. You can't short it. I mean, how are you going to make a market on this thing that you can't short? I mean, to me, it's just, you know what? God bless CME and CBOE for bringing to market a product that people are going to go crazy for. But, people have made fortunes in this country for a couple hundred years now without the Bitcoin. You don't need the Bitcoin to make a fortune. I think if you dabble in the Bitcoin, do it with a small amount of money because you're likely to see most of it go away.
So what you're saying here, if I can just read between the lines for you, is that opening print 5 p.m. on Sunday, Valentine Ventures is lifting offers, is what you're telling me.
Hey, man, watch it. Have fun watching it. But I can't get far enough away from this. I think it's ridiculous.
Mark, is Carmen Line diving in with both feet on Sunday, sir?
No, but I do think it's interesting. And, I think if you think what Bitcoin is currently, essentially to me, kind of looks and feels like kind of like some of the bubbles we've seen in precious metals in the past. I think of it as like a digital precious metal in some way, shape, or form. You think about it. Why does gold have any value, right? It's other than making jewelry. What is the actual value of gold, right? What do we use gold for?
Production.
Almost nothing.
Yeah,
almost nothing.
a few electronics uses, but not a ton. Yeah.
Yeah. Yet it's worth 1/10 of Bitcoin. Now, the fact that gold is worth 1/10 of Bitcoin for an ounce of gold.
But it's so shiny.
Right. So think about this. I could buy for an ounce of gold that is $1,200. Bitcoin is what a 1,200% more expensive. All right. So there's where kind of the idea of logic kind of falls out of it. And maybe there's a little bit less that's interesting to me in it. However, I do think that in of itself is kind of interesting. In terms of trading, I think that there is something there, and I think that eventually, I was reading an article that said that 1,000 people own 1,000 people own 40% of all Bitcoin. When they decide to sell, there will be a serious correction in Bitcoin. Until then, you could have things could run illogically. But at some point, there will be supply. I was joking with your boys, the Thompson buddies, that the Winklevoss twins are billionaires in Bitcoin. But how are they going to get that money out? I just said, well, what they should do is buy everything on Overstock and just return it for cash. So I think it's interesting. Now, my personal gut says, I think when I look at Bitcoin in general, I think Ethereum is a lot more interesting than Bitcoin. The platform, I think that looks like a real thing, something of value, something that means something. Bitcoin is less interesting to me. And the people that are touting on our Twitter are likely very, very long and waiting for you to bid it up. And I am definitely seeing this is turning into the shoe shiniest event since the tech.com bubble. Bitcoin is pets.com, 9.0. But at some point it could be worth, the value of gold or something like that. I mean, it is a place for value to rest, non-quantified value to rest. That's kind of the way I think about it.
Yeah, I saw that same article. In fact, I think a listener sent it in about about that article about all that. So actually, since we're talking listeners, let's just get to it. But speaking of articles, by the way, an interesting piece coming out, I think it was Bloomberg recently too. This isn't talking about the CBOE futures, it's talking about the CME. We have dueling products coming out essentially a week from each other. And they're saying, I don't have the specs on the CBOE one, but the CME put out their circuit breakers on it, and they were saying that this past week's worth of trading, just Thursday alone, would have pretty much triggered every stop in the book that they had. Those products, if they rise or fall by 7% from the prior day settlement, they would have shut down. On Thursday alone, the 7% threshold would have been hit less than 2 hours after the session started. After a few hours later, about 13% down. So at 10:15 a.m., the 20% cap would have been hit. It would have been frozen for another hour. So all of you are looking forward to maybe tamping down some of the volatility of Bitcoin. That would be interesting. Or it'd be interesting to see if it keeps trading on these other quote-unquote exchanges while it's locked at places like CME or CBOE, how that will fare out in the marketplace as well. A lot of craziness can happen. Speaking of craziness, let's open up the floodgates and dive right on into our volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL, posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Vol voicemail, the portion of the show where the inmates run the asylum. Sometimes we like to poll those inmates, see what's on their mind. A crazy adventure, I know, but it's always, at least usually, fun. This week, we thought we'd ask you guys, this Bitcoin battle is just heating up. We have, of course, CME announced they were launching on the 18th. CBOE said, no, we're coming on the 10th. And then just to be included in the party, Nasdaq said, us too, but not till Q2 of 2018. So everybody's getting into the futures game with so much out there, so many choices. How do you guys think you'll be trading Bitcoin in just a few months in 2018? You're going to be slinging those CBOE futures that launch on the 10th. You're going to be slinging the CME futures that launch about a week later on the 18th. Are you going to wait till Q2? You're going to be a patient little boy and wait till Q2 2018 for the Nasdaq futures. I don't think a lot of people associate Bitcoin and patience, but hey, maybe that's your pick. Or are you going to go the quote-unquote old school way? Bill, we shall start with you. What is your vote, if you have one? And then B, more importantly, what do you think our audience is voting for?
Obviously, I'm not interested in it. I hope it works out for people. Honestly, if you get into Bitcoin, God bless you. I hope it works out for you. I really do. I hope that you won't get caught up in your own hubris and not sell at some point. If you can get in and get out and make 100%, which seems to be about a 3-day holding period, good for you. The thing I want to say is, and maybe I'm just too old, and maybe I'm too curmudgeonly to not get excited about all this. I just think it ends badly. But
well, the two are not mutually exclusive. You can still be old and curmudgeonly, and it doesn't have to end badly. Just saying.
Thank you, Mark. God bless you. There's like a difference between a concept that's going to play out and the investment vehicle people choose. And I go back to 1998. If you remember 1998, 1999, when we were talking about technology and the internet, things like Wi-Fi, and it was kind of blowing our minds. The interwebs, exactly. And we were predicting what it might be. Well, I will tell you, having been there, for any of our younger listeners, that the internet is vastly greater than we ever thought. It's more important and it's extraordinary. But if you went back to 2000 and you bought the top 5 tech companies, and I bought the top 5 railroad companies, 10 years later, you were down 50%. I was up 400%. So, but again, and now we've repositioned, reordered, and now there's a brand new reemergence, a rising of the phoenix, if you will, of tech companies. And Google and Apple and Amazon are going to take over the world. They're phenomenal investments, but we had to go through that first. Let's hurry up and try to figure out how to play this thing. Oop, we all screwed up, and now let's do it orderly. And I think cryptocurrencies is clearly the future, according to people who are much smarter than me. But I'm just not sure that this iteration from where we go sets the floor from which cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin can grow. I think there'll be a massive reshuffling and reordering. And 10 years from now, people will be like, God, do you remember in 2017 those massive of cryptocurrencies and the Bitcoin bubble? I truly believe that's where we're headed.
Oh, I agree with you, at least with Bitcoin. I think there are other cryptocurrencies, and who knows. I think it's fascinating. The stuff Microsoft is working on is where you're able to do the transaction in seconds instead of days, like blockchain, is going to maybe change the industry. I think, people are going to get burned on Bitcoin, but maybe there will be, at some point, we'll get rid of the pets.coms and the Amazons and Facebooks will come out of it, is really what. And I agree with you 100%, Bill.
Bill. Actually, first off, Mark, do you have a vote here? Bill kind of dodged it. Do you have a vote here on which futures everyone's lining up for? Maybe old school Bitcoin.
I think so. Which future? So CBOE, CME, Bitcoin Cash, or what are the other
Nasdaq
options?
in Q2 of 2018? They're going to wait till next year.
Oh, I like. I think you're going to see people. I think you're just knowing our audience. The CME one's going to be more interesting than the CBOE one, despite the fact that the CBOE one's getting out first and maybe is the better constructed one.
Well, you know what? Patience, like I mentioned, is not exactly associated with the Bitcoin crowd, and that seems to be the way our poll is playing out. They don't want to wait. They want to go this Sunday. 52% saying they want to sling themselves to them CBOE Gemini futures. 27% coming in number 2 saying the CME Bitcoin reference rate futures. A little more than a week later, only 3% in the Bill Nasdaq. I'm going to put Bill in that camp just for fun. The Nasdaq Futures Q2 2018 camp, 18%. So they want to stay with the good old quote unquote old school slinging over there on Coinbase and other venues. Maybe Mt. Gox for the old school Bitcoin heads out there. Speaking of Bitcoin heads, Bill, they're not your curmudgeonly ways are not winning you a lot of love right now. You get a lot of people chiming in, giving you some love. More is less, saying let go of the trigger man on Bitcoin. He wants you to trade it. We got T-Mal in the chat room saying this guy is too old. Was he a doubter at 100? So were you this? He also says this anti-Bitcoin guy is probably one of the same guys that doesn't understand the move from pit trading to electronic trading. So you're getting some love, Bill, out there. Getting some love.
That's all true. I am very old. I am very curmudgeonly, but I've been managing hundreds of millions of dollars for 30 years. So I'll be around in 10 years. Anybody's materially getting into Bitcoin won't. End of story.
Here.
So there you go. I'm guessing you were a doubter at 100 as well then, just to put that in your, not just because it's 15,000 now. You hated it the whole way up.
No, but I love it. That's okay. Two sides of an argument makes two sides of a market. Go for it. I wish everybody. I'm not wishing anybody ill will. It's funny, and like in the investment communities, there's a certain large contingent of the investment community that if they're not in the trade, they just badmouth the people that are in it. Just saying these people are going to get their faces ripped off. Like I don't want anybody to get their faces ripped off. If you're long Bitcoin, go for it.
how about this guy? He's clearly joking, but he said it's clearly going to the moon or higher. I just sold my house to buy Bitcoin and crypto kitties. See you clowns in Tahiti.
There you go.
That's from @MumblesQ.
There you go. Yes.
Made me laugh out loud.
There you go. That always works. Hopefully, he put his kid's college fund in there as well. And hopefully the local community college is a good venue for their child. All right, it's funny. It used to be the gold bugs were the hardest of the hardcores. Now it seems like they've moved. That crowd has moved into the Bitcoin realm. And if you're not feeling the love, they will come after you in all sorts of ways. Speaking of feeling the love, our old buddy Mark Brant chiming in here saying, "Who is listing the options on Bitcoin first? Probably CBOE." I might have to lean with you on that since they're listing the futures first. Everyone's racing out of the gate, so who knows? He also says Chicago is taking control of Bitcoin exactly as Al Capone took control of booze distribution. He taught the city well. Well, we did learn a few lessons from him. And hey, this is in our wheelhouse. You got to give this to Chicago. We have some expertise. We have some domain expertise here. So let us have this one. New York can have their bonds and their stocks, and London can have whatever it is they trade over there. We got this. We got the derivative side, and that's coming our way. They got so many Bitcoins, like the Bitcoin Ball show. This is the guy who wrote in about that article you mentioned here, Mark. I'll just give it a quick plug here from, I like the handle, Nom Nom. Nom Nom says, I was excited about Bitcoin. This is giving me pause, and that's what you're talking about there, Mark. With 40% of Bitcoin held by perhaps 1,000 users, at current prices, each may want to sell about half of his or her holdings. Of course, all this fear, that is scary, that is concentrated. On the other hand, they seem like they have a vested interest in keeping this thing high. That would not scare me of a sell. It would more scare me of these guys are going to protect this thing because this is their baby. They have a vested interest in keeping it high until they don't. So I guess at that moment, you want to get the heck out of Dodge. Also, interesting note in that article, digital currency, not a security. So the same laws about collusion don't really apply. So keep that in mind if you're trading this. Usually in an equity, you can't all get together and say, let's buy it, let's sell it. In Bitcoin, same rules of engagement do not apply. Here's a quick one. This is right up your alley, Bill, so I'll let you have this one. BLCC wants to know, short VIX, is it still crowded? Please discuss. I know this is kind of your cause celeb there, Bill. So what do you have to say here for Mr. or Mrs. BLCC? Are we still super crowded in short VIX?
Yeah, so Mark addressed this earlier. I'll make the same point that he is. We've never been short VIX, a crowded short VIX. We've never been crowded short volatility. The market is profoundly long and skewed to long. I read a statistic earlier that said that 11% of the purchases of the 50 Delta VIX call turn out profitable. That's called the volatility risk premium. The fact that it's that fat and that you lose that often means there is a profound bias long vol. What we have is the pedestrianization of volatility ETFs. So grandma owns XIB and she's made a fortune and she can't stop talking about it. That is not a crowded trade. To Mark's point earlier, there are a few people that have massive positions net long vol, because at the end of the day, VIX and vol are used to hedge, and that will always be the market for this. Now, when the futures curve in VIX is permanently inverted when VIX is low, or when the volatility risk premium, which is the spread between VIX and the 20-day trading realized vol, when that becomes zero or negative, then we can talk about a crowded trade. Otherwise, this term is being bandied about really incorrectly all the time, but I'm fine with that. I'm on both sides. And to be clear, I run two hedge funds. One's long, one's short. I'm not one of these guys that's all short all the time. I have a long vol fund, but I'm also part of the bigger crowd, which is that VIX and vol, related securities and derivatives, are always long biased.
How did I know that question would get your dander up, sir? Good one indeed. We got to keep rolling into our final segment, listeners. It's time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, listeners, another week, not quite a bullseye for me this week, but I guess if I had gone with my gut last week, I would have. I was feeling right about 975, and that is almost literally where we are right now, but I kept it a little elevated. I went 10 and a quarter because we were so much higher last week. I thought, I don't know if they're going to squeeze all of that juice out after non-farms, and that's a lot of juice to squeeze. Turns out they did. So that extra half a handle, that would have been yet another bullseye, but then people would have accused me of cheating or something. So I guess it's good. I still win. So I was 10 and a quarter. Mr. Meatball was 11 and a quarter. He was talking up his book. That's what he gets for hedging on the show. And the ghost of Russell was an embarrassing 42 and a half. So once again, Russell's ghost is picking for him. But I shall go first because I was the winner for this week. And I was liking 975 last week. This week, now that I know they can't ring at all, I'm liking where we are right now. So I'm going to say we're going to hang out right around here this time next week. You know, if Trump impeachment, if missiles, if the impending Olympics close to North Korea, if non-farms, if all this stuff can't proceed to budge the needle, then what the heck's going to do it this time next week? We shall see, as I predict an unched week out here. Mr. Meatball, you were next, but you know what? Bill's our guest. I'm going to let him go next instead. Mr. Bill, what do you got for this time next week, sir?
A 10. Just a 10. Because it's an easy thing to say. But I will say this. Here's my can't lose trade going forward. Short the VIX, long Bitcoin. Just, take it to the bank. Every day, short the VIX, long Bitcoin.
Nothing could happen on either of those legs.
Nope.
That would be terrifying at all. That's a sleep at night trade right there. I like that. Let's put that on.
Oh yeah.
Let's have your grandmother get your grandmother in that trade. The sleep at night, the night trade we'll call it, because you'll probably go night pretty quick. All right, Mr. Meatball, you were talking up your book last week. How are you feeling this week?
I like my book. I really do. I think that you're going to see, we're going to get a rally next week around options expiration. I think VIX sits here. What did you guess, Mark?
975. Then Bill comes in and carps me to 10 on the upside. So he's not coming back for a while here. That's all I'm saying.
My gosh. That's a tight market. All right. I'm going to say 974.
Oh, scumbags. I got scumbags.
No, I'm kidding. Let's go crazy. I'm going to say 915.
Wow. I'm liking what you're selling, though. I could see that before the ghost of Russell's coming through, which is, he's always buying vol, that guy. And he's got to be, he's liking those 35s that we're trading in Jan today. He wants a piece of that action. So he's going to go 35 for this time next week out there in VIX land. And of course, by the time we gather together around the old volatility fire next week, we'll have seen about a week of Bitcoin futures trading. So we'll have some data in the old bank as opposed to all this endless speculating you've always been making us do for months now. We'll have some actual data, which will be nice. And before we go, one last time around the horn, by the way, of course, we'll have all the details from RMC Asia, friends. Meanwhile, if you want to check it out, or you want to check out all this stuff on the CFE Futures, I'm guessing you do, head on over to CBOE.com. Check out the blogs Mr. Rhodes and his teams are writing. Then head on over to the Bitcoin Futures product page. That's what answer, hopefully, a lot of your questions that you guys have been sending us for the better part of the past couple of weeks. All right, and as our guest, Mr. Bill, even though you cart me on the crystal ball, I will forgive you. What do you got cooking these days? And if our listeners are interested in learning more about your funds, where should they go? What should they do?
ValentineVentures.com, or follow me on Twitter at BValentineCFA. Thanks for the time today.
There you go. Follow the man at BValentineCFA. Puts out some fun matrices every now and then, so you too can get into the matrix. Following Bill over there on Twitter. And last but not least, Mr. Meatball, my little birdies are telling me you may indeed have foolishly delved into the publishing realm yet again. What you got for us, sir?
Yeah, my second book just published on the 4th. Trading Options for Edge. It is for me, it's the culmination of 3 years of work. I busted my butt on it, and I've gotten some really nice reviews on Twitter so far. I think it's a great book, and it really is just me really talking about how do traders think and how do they trade, and kind of breaking down each trade. So it's instead of here's what a condor is and here's what a calendar is, it's actually how to trade them. And then finally, again, if you're interested in volatility or you're interested in my new broad cap edge fund, reach out to me, Mark at Carmen Line Capital. But should be a lot of both of those funds. My first fund is still in business. My second fund launches January timeframe. I'd like to get that moving.
Speaking of getting things moving, if you guys are in there listening, you like your Bitcoin, I got a feeling you do. You're chiming in already there in the live chat. Stay tuned. We're going to take a little hiatus here, but we'll be back in about half an hour, 1:30 for TWIFO this week in futures options. I got a feeling some Bitcoin will make it onto that show as well as, of course, some crude, some gold, whatever else has been lighting it up this week in futures options. As the name implies, of course, if you're listening after the fact on iTunes or wherever else, just check out the network feed. You get that show there as well. So all you listening live, stay tuned. Maybe we'll put some options news rundowns in the chat room for you. In the meantime, to keep you busy, we'll be back in a little bit. Otherwise, until then, we'll see you next time for more Volatility Views.
Volatility Views is brought to you by CBOE. CBOE is one of the world's largest exchange holding companies, and we're inspired every day to innovate some of the industry's most powerful products, technology, and solutions. We're the industry's leading force driving access to global markets. A better trading experience and powerful data and analytics to inform better strategies. We're committed to engineering new ways to help our customers realize their potential and navigate the marketplace of tomorrow, today. Visit CBOE.com. That's CBOE.com to learn more about our expanded offerings.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.